Right. Hello there. This is my hard mode guide for any percent glitches category and made of scare, obviously. If you're new to speedrunning and this is like the first kind of tutorial you're looking at, I would recommend going and looking at the easy version of this, since that's a more in-depth tutorial into generally what you're doing in the run. I won't be explaining everything that I do in this run or why I'm doing it, so that's just something to keep in mind. In this guide, I will be also going and grabbing every cylinder and every music note sheet. Basically, why is because there is like some little differences here and there that I do want to point out. But for the most part, around the story items, there's not much difference in a drastic way. Something else that I find quite useful in hard is if you can get good at strafing in a straight line, which is really easy to do if you're able to. Reasons is because it can help us get around corners way easier than just flinging our mouse to move our camera left and right all the time. And also, we can use strafing to allow us to open doors earlier than we normally would, which means we can get through them easier without losing any sprint or momentum on our part. One of the final things before we actually get into the sections of the game is for hard mode, I feel it's generally quite important to know how to juke around enemies well, be able to spot enemies RNG, and how to work around it quickly. One thing to point out about the juking though, even if you're really good at juking, the enemies still can hit you. The juking is more so just, if they do end up hitting you, that's all they get. They only get that one hit. You will see some juking around in a few spots in this guide, and I'll point them out if I can. So now we're in the entrance. The only difference to the entrance is in the bad ending route, and in the chapel where we go get our first cylinder, there's going to be an enemy in there, whereas in easy there isn't. Depending on his RNG, it can go either way. Also here you'll see I'm strafing and then opening the door to not lose any momentum. Also what I like to do on bad ending is open the door we're going to go in first and then keep going forward. It just makes it easier. So as you can see there, the enemy spawned at the other side of the room, so he's not going to give us any trouble at all. And we can just grab the cylinder and run back out. Before we get into the basement, another thing I want to point out is we will be picking up every bit of health and modulator ammo we can in this run, simply because it's better to have them just in case the run goes sideways. So now we're going to be getting into the basement. A few things is from full health on hard, you can only take 3 hits before you die. The scripted damage in this bit still only drops you to 50% health, which means it'll only take enemies 2 hits to kill you. So in this bit, I do get bad RNG. So what I usually do is I bump into the back of him, open this door so I can back up a little bit better, and then I just juke him like that. Once you get the hang of juking enemies, you can do it really, really quickly and instinctively. I got bad RNG here as well. You don't have to crouch and hold your breath, but sometimes I just like to, just in case the other enemy comes up behind me. For this bit we got good RNG on the last enemy finally. Once you're in this little bit, the enemies won't chase you. It's the same for easy and hard. As you can see there. The enemy just stops. There is actually a few points in the game where enemies don't follow you. Or they can't. So for the most part now, it's just following the route. There's no other enemies that you need to worry about until we get into the garden. If you want to, you can heal on the way through this, or the beginning of the garden. I wouldn't recommend it though, since you might not need it for a while. And if you accidentally take like one random hit from one of the enemies we're going to run past in the garden, you're just going to be back to the same like level of health. Whereas if you don't heal and you get hit, then it's more worth using a heal. So now we're getting into the first part of the gardens. I think this bit is actually called like Dark Forest, but I just call it Garden Part 1. It's pretty much the exact same. There is an enemy up ahead, as always, so just give him a wide berth and you'll be fine. The difference in this bit is the enemy up ahead. But for the most part, every time I've done this, he's never gave me any trouble. So just don't run in like directly past him, like literally touching him, and you'll be fine. So once we get through this archway, even if he's right behind us, he'll just despawn anywhere. I will be skipping the cutscenes as well for this game. So now we're in the mine. For this bit, depending on which strat you're going to use, if you want to do the YOLO strat, I would recommend healing, or at least being get ready to heal in case you take one hit. Since there are two enemies in here though, that can be pretty risky if you're not very confident in doing the YOLO strat. What I'll show is the safe strat, where basically you will... It's really difficult for an enemy to aggro onto you, so that means I don't even bother healing here. So what we do is you just run straight up and press the button. I typically always crouch at this point and go over to this side, try not to get in range of the enemy, because the enemies do have a detect zone around them. When I feel like the minecart's about to crash, I do usually hold my breath and walk forward, just so I'm close as I possibly can. From this point now, the enemies will run over there, and you can just finish the mine. Just make sure you do it in a fast manner. So now with this door part, we're going to pick up our third heal. Typically I will always heal here, even if I haven't took any hits. Just because it's generally something to do, and it's always better to have full health coming into this next bit. There is an enemy here, as you can see, he's walking down there for me. Sometimes he can be right up here, just around the corner. As long as you don't run straight past him, like super close, he won't give you any trouble. And since we've just healed, we want to try and avoid that. So now we're going to be getting into the garden part 2. As for this part, there isn't really any enemy changes or anything like that. The only differences we'll guess is I'm pretty sure there is a lot more enemies in the open area garden bit, and also we get visited by an old friend. If you're really nervous, you can just save here. If it's like your first run and you're getting new to hard. This bit's pretty important, I feel, to notice when you get good or bad RNG. So I noticed that I can just squeeze through the side there and get past him. This guy has a habit of hitting you, like he does there. Don't worry if you do, it's not the end of the world. And this guy, I actually got super lucky, and I could just instantly tell that I could get past him. Once you get into this bit, the enemies do de-aggro like that. I think it's got something to do with if you're doing bad ending, they couldn't really afford to have all the enemies chasing after you. So that's quite a nice decision by the devs, so we don't have to go completely sneaky. So this is where we get our second cylinder. Obviously if you've played the game, or if you watched the other tutorial, you know what you need to do. So I'll probably just speed this bit up. Okay, so now we're on our way back down. The enemy that there's always an enemy after this point. Just give him a wide berth and he won't give you any problems. And he shouldn't follow you any further, especially not to the fountain. And the fountain up ahead, we're going to get another heal. Obviously, if you feel like you don't need to take it, you don't have to. I just prefer picking up everything as fast as I can, just in case something goes wrong. Obviously, I'm still fairly new to running through hard, so I probably will, either I will or another runner, will probably really try and optimize this run. The same and easy, you can just do the same thing. Just run past them. They might try and get a slight hit on you, they might not. Remember to pick up the modulator ammo there. So in this bit, there is a few more enemies. I don't have an exact count, but I just know there is. And we're just going to do this. Try and weave through the trees, because enemies are faster than you, and they will eventually catch up and punch you. Once you activate this, our friend Mr. X, or Abraham, is going to become active. Don't worry about him at all, because you can do this exactly the same. Typically I always put my heal there because, yeah, an enemy can literally be right behind you. Luckily for me, I didn't actually get stuck. Then you can also get very unfortunate, like this. The enemy's right there. I did try and quickly run over to the other side and crouch so he wouldn't aggro on me, but he did. And I got hit again, which, it's not ideal, but I was just curious if he was chasing me all the way in. So now we're on the ground floor. As you can see from that 2 hits, nearly killed me. So I'm going to have to heal here. The gardens won't always go like that though. So until we get to the beer tap, this bit is pretty much the exact same. Just completely ignore the enemy to the right and just keep on going. He's never chased me super far into this bit, so I don't think he can. Right, so we're about to pick up the beer tap and make our way back. Usually for this bit, I always use a modulator. Once I can see all the enemies and know I've got a decent path through, just so I don't get stuck because they can clump up. I use the modulator because we've got enough ammo, and there's a lot of ammo pickups anyway, so we might as well utilize this as much as we can in hard to make our lives easier. Once we've done the beer tap puzzle as well, we're going to be ringing a bell to lure all the enemies into the waiting area. The enemy in front will either wait there for a few seconds or will just run straight away from what I've found. As long as you're fast enough, you can usually either run straight in front of him or you can just follow behind and he shouldn't bother you. Now we're getting to the first floor. This is where the game can get pretty scary, especially if you're low on resources. But hopefully you've had good RNG and you'll have a decent amount of resources left. As you can see, I have 2 healths and 3 modulator ammos. If you look in the bottom right to see all of your modulators, since it doesn't count the one that's ready to go. So for this first bit, when we go and get the crank, this enemy can be a real pain. For the most part, he always at least hits me once, which is super annoying. But 1 hit isn't too bad. It could be worse, you could get 2 hit. For this, what I also like to do is close the door behind me as fast as I can. In hard, closing doors on enemies is actually really useful because they can lose track of you. I strafe and open this door and then quickly turn around and close it because I need to do this puzzle in here. If I've been fast enough, I've never had the guy from the corridor walk in at this bit, but you can hear his footsteps, so you can kind of judge how far away he is. For this section, you just do the exact same as on easy, and you should be fine. If the guy from the corridors aggroed you all the way up here, he can sometimes block the way, but it's very rare from what I've seen. There's also modulator ammo on there. If you want, you can pick it up. It's completely up to you. Since it is hard, I always just like having the extra ammo for my modulator. As you can see, he didn't follow me. So even on hard, the modulator completely makes them lose you. Just as long as you've moved far enough away. Now we press the jump scare. And we run back round. If the guy from the corridor aggroed up here, he's gonna be a real pain. Basically, he can close this door that we're gonna go through, and sometimes he can be stood in here next to Henry. And he will hit us at least once while we're picking up the piece. Luckily, I got good RNG here, and he's just kind of stood there in the corridor wondering what's going on. From this bit, at least Henry, which is the one with no shirt on, he can chase you through this whole segment sometimes. It can be quite annoying. So once we get through here, what I've started doing is stunning him here if he's chasing me. He can't actually enter this room, but because we do the trap skip now, on glitchless, we kind of need to run back, and we don't want him chasing us through this whole bit. I use a heal here now because the library can be pretty brutal. But now we're just going to continue on with the run as if nothing ever happened. I have the exact same amount as resources, so we're just going to see what happens. In this instance, the guy wasn't in the corridor, which can happen in a normal run. If he's not in that corridor, it typically means he's in the room with the Jack-in-the-Box. Which is pretty good, since it means by the time you do the library, he probably won't be in there anymore. In the library, juking enemies is actually, it's really good if you're good at it. Noticing which direction they're running towards can make or break you taking a hit or not. Unfortunately, he kind of trolled me and stood there, so I took a hit. And they kind of trolled me in this bit as well. Usually they, because they run so fast, they usually overshoot, and you can just like run straight past them. On this occasion though, the enemies were being a bit of a dick, and instead thought they'd just keep trapping me. Then again, this is why I like to pick up all the resources I can just in case. So as you can see, he's not in here anymore because he was probably here on our way there. Since you probably know how to do this part, nothing changes in this section for hard mode, so I'll just speed it up until we get out. So in this bit, after the Jack-in-the-Box puzzle, if there's a lot of enemies in this room, which sometimes there actually can be quite a few, just use the modulator if you have to. It's nearly come to the end of its use anyway, so if we've got extra charges, we might as well use them at any point to avoid death. And once again, they can't get into the elevator, not even on hard. So now we're up to the second floor. For this section, there is 3 new enemy spawns that are in the first part. So there's going to be an enemy spawning just before the key in this bit. What you can do here, you can either tank the damage or you can use a modulator. Just try and use it a bit before I actually did, because you won't be able to interact with the key. But either way, you can either heal the damage he deals, or you can use the modulator. It's completely up to you. Once we get past here, there's going to be another enemy. Once again, if you want, you can just use the modulator here. And just completely avoid him even aggroing onto you. Bear in mind though, this does make Abraham run a bit faster, but as far as I can tell, he never is fast enough to actually catch up because of the effect the modulator has on him. You don't need to pick up that modulator there, but I like to anyway, especially if I'm doing bad ending, just in case Henry kind of wants to be a troll. This fight goes the exact same way as easy. You can tank every single one of the machine's hits, just don't get hit by Abraham or you will just die. Best way I do this is just do large squares around the room, or just try and keep the widest berth I can from him. And always make sure you know exactly where he is. There you go. It only takes one extra one in hard, so it's not too bad. And heal instantly afterwards, or you have the chance for the enemies to pull you into an execution. Using the modulator here is also good if the enemy's in that position. You'll stun him, and you'll stun Henry here. Which luckily, you can just squeeze past. I had a brain fart moment and picked the wrong key. The reason a modulator at that point is sometimes they can catch up and hit you as you're picking up the cylinder. Which if more than one of them does it, you probably will die. So now, thanks to Isaac, we're back in the basement again. Just without our modulator. Well, since the first time we didn't. If you want, you can save here, as well as on the first floor that I showed. Just in case. It's not optimal at all, but if this is like your first or second run, or even your third or fourth, like, until you're confident enough to not save, don't feel like you have to. This is our fourth cylinder. So the bad ending now, you've got all your story items and you're good. For this bit, it's just the same as the first time. The enemies are in slightly different starting positions, but if you get good RNG like that, you'll be fine. Just work your way around the enemies as best you can. And remember, you can go to the right of this bit like that. As you're coming out, there is an enemy in this corridor. His RNG is very odd. If he's in this point, you're going to have to bop him to pull him out and then run around him. And this is the very ending bit. This is for the good ending side. Once we navigate through these tunnels and we're in the main hall bit again, we will take a slight detour for a good ending. Now this bit can be quite scary if you've used all your heals. Ignore that heal on the thing, that's not meant to be there. Oh wait, yeah, I completely skipped a section of this. Before we get into the main hall bit, we have to do Isaac's fight. This section, I just called it the red section. It's fairly simple. You might take one hit, if that, as long as the enemies are in a good spawn place. Just follow the route around. You shouldn't be able to die here unless you're one hit from death. Which, if you are, it's a bit questioning because there is a heal right next to the save station. So now we're in the Isaac boss fight. My fight unfortunately was pretty scuffed. And I had to use another heal, which I usually don't have to, but I got stuck on bits of furniture and that really slowed me down. As in this fight you need to be fast, but it plays the exact same as the easy version. Also, I'm not sure why I was dodging the purple smoke. For the most part, if you only run into them once or twice, it's not the end of the world. So realistically, I should have only used one heal there. But having the extra heals are always good in case your navigation and your pathing isn't as good as it usually is. So I've got one more heal left. No, sorry. So I had one more heal left and I had to use that at the end of the Isaac fight. For this enemy here, you can literally sit at this position. As soon as he opens the door, just hold your breath and then wait for a clearance. Since we're about to vent, he can't chase us. Right, now, once we get to the end of this vent, we will be doing our detour. This is only for good ending, so if you're doing bad ending and you just needed the cylinders, then there you go. You've completed the game on hard. For good ending, this bit can be a bit sketchy. If you get good RNG, like I'm about to get, it's not really that bad. Because there should be an enemy in this corridor, but if he's not here, he'll be in the room where the bar tap is. There is still an enemy in this bit though. If you get good RNG, you can just run towards the skull and activate it without worrying. If he's closer, you have to do it a bit sneakier. He will always get aggroed to the sound of this door if he's close enough to it. And there's your fourth music note. If your enemies are in good positions, you can just run all the way back. If you're still at full health and the enemy's in the corridor, you can just run straight past him. There's no way he can chase you back into the main part, because they're about to vent. And that's it. If you've done that, then congratulations, you've completed the good ending on hard.
Thomas? Thomas!
For the most part, something I have actually learned from running hard mode a lot and doing loads of practicing and testing for it, it's not actually as difficult as some people might think. It's actually fairly straightforward and simple. I thought I was gonna have to come up with a lot more strategies than I actually had to. Literally, all you need to do is use the modulator at certain parts, and then make sure you have enough ammo just in case things go wrong to then use the modulator whenever you need it. And that's sort of my hard guide. I hope I've helped at least some people, at least showcase that it's not actually that difficult. Yes, you can get unlucky and die, but for the most part, it's not actually that bad once you get used to it. And yeah, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. If this helped somebody, then that's awesome. That's the only reason I'm making this guide, so it's my health one. I just want to help people, mainly to see not to be scared of hard mode. It's intimidating the first few times, but once you spend enough time in hard mode, trying to get around, you'll just breeze it. Just remember a few things: that use your modulator smartly. Use your modulator smartly. Pick up all the ammo you can for it, if you feel like you need it. If enemies are chasing you, remember, closing doors can actually help you escape. If you're getting chased by enemies, I would not advise going into a save room. If you go into a save room and enemies chase you to the doorway, they can't get in, but you won't be able to open the door until the enemies leave, which can take time, and since this is a speedrun, it's not very optimal. So if you're getting chased by a lot of enemies, use the modulator, and then if that's towards a save point, use the modulator and then save, so you de-aggro them on you, and you don't get locked into a save room. Thanks for watching.